My name is Michael Foster, and what I'm about to tell you is not just a story about business, it's about blood, loyalty, and the fine line between trust and betrayal. I learned the hard way that sometimes the sharpest knife in your back is held by the person you die to protect. And sometimes, that same betrayal becomes the spark that ignites your greatest triumph. 15 years ago, Foster Technologies was nothing more than a struggling IT consulting firm, an ambitious idea my father had built from scratch with calloused hands and sleepless nights. My dad, Richard Foster, was a genius when it came to anything involving circuits or code, but he had the business sense of a daydreamer. By 2010, we were just 3 months away from bankruptcy. Our accounts were bleeding red, and so was Dad's health. Stress had carved deep lines into his face. He looked 20 years older than he actually was. I was 25, freshly graduated from business school, hungry to prove myself. My older brother, James, was 30 and already famous in the local nightlife scene. Charismatic, loud, and charming, the kind of man who could talk his way out of anything. Dad adored him. James was the golden boy, the firstborn, the one who could do no wrong. But charm doesn't pay off debts. And James's endless nights of parties, champagne, and networking had cost us multiple clients. The company my father once called his life's work was collapsing under the weight of bad decisions. I remember the day everything changed as clearly as if it happened this morning. It was a rainy Tuesday. The office was silent except for the soft patter of rain against the glass windows. I walked into Dad's office to find him hunched over his desk, his hands trembling as he stared at our latest financial report. His eyes were red. "It's over, Michael," he whispered, not even looking up. "Everything I built. I'm going to lose it all." Something inside me broke. Not with anger, but resolve. I couldn't stand there and watch him lose the dream he'd built from nothing, even if he'd never truly seen me as more than the backup plan. That night, while James was out celebrating some meaningless deal, I sat down at my desk and got to work. What began as a few hours of review turned into 18-hour days. I studied every client contract, every overdue invoice, every hidden corner of our finances. I didn't sleep much that year, but I didn't need to. I was running on adrenaline and quiet fury. Mom used to worry. "Michael, you need to rest," she'd whisper, appearing at my office door with a plate of food at midnight. "You can't save the company alone." But I had no choice. Someone had to. The first year nearly broke me. I restructured our debt, cut unnecessary expenses, starting with James's so-called entertainment budget, and personally met every client we'd lost. Some slammed their doors in my face. Others laughed at the idea that Foster Technologies could make a comeback. But persistence is a strange kind of power, it wears people down. By the end of that year, we weren't drowning anymore. We were breathing. James found it hilarious. Look at little Mikey playing businessman, he'd sneer when he actually bothered to show up at the office. "Dad's still going to make me CEO, you know. I'm the oldest." I never argued. I didn't need to. Success has a way of silencing noise. Over the next 5 years, I turned that dying consulting firm into a digital powerhouse. We shifted from basic IT support to full-scale digital transformation. We built proprietary software, expanded into cloud computing, and signed clients across 3 countries. Revenue jumped from 2 million to 10, then 50, then 100 million. Our team grew from 20 to over 500. Dad's health improved as the company thrived, but his favoritism toward James never changed. At family dinners, he'd smile proudly, praising James's strategic vision while I quietly reviewed quarterly reports on my phone. I stopped caring about the credit long ago. What mattered was the company, the employees, the future. But behind my silence, I was planning, watching, recording. For every deal James sabotaged, for every client he lost, for every reckless dollar he spent, I kept receipts. Literally. And while everyone thought I was just the diligent son working overtime, I was also slowly becoming indispensable. I cultivated personal relationships with our biggest clients, earned their trust, and made sure that every major project ran through me. There was something else too, something no one, not even my father, knew about. During the company's worst days, when the banks wouldn't lend and creditors were circling, I had used my personal savings and taken private loans to keep us afloat. In return, I received shares, 40% of the company, quietly buried in a pile of corporate paperwork. I thought that would be enough to secure my place. I was wrong. Last month, everything changed. Dad announced his retirement. Everyone expected him to name me successor. It was the logical choice. I'd been running the company for years while James treated it like a playground. Even James started showing up early, pretending to care, flashing that fake charm around investors. The shareholders' meeting was set for a Friday afternoon. The boardroom buzzed with quiet anticipation. I'd spent weeks preparing a detailed 5-year growth plan, our next evolution. I was ready. Dad stood before the room, adjusting his glasses. As you know, he began, I'll be stepping down as CEO of Foster Technologies. This company has been my life's work, and this decision has not been easy. I straightened in my chair, heart pounding with pride and relief. It was finally my time. There's only one person, Dad continued, who truly embodies the leadership qualities needed to take Foster Technologies into the future. Someone who understands our family values and vision. I smiled faintly. My son, James Foster, will be taking over as CEO effective immediately. The words hit like a hammer to the chest. My throat tightened, my pulse roared in my ears. The room went dead silent. But Dad wasn't finished. Furthermore, he said gravely, James has brought to my attention some irregularities in our recent operations. It appears that certain individuals have been making unauthorized decisions, possibly compromising the company's integrity. James rose, holding a folder, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. I'm afraid my brother, Michael, has been acting outside his authority, he said smoothly. He's been making false promises to clients, moving funds without approval, and engaging in questionable practices. Every word was a lie. A twisted, poisonous version of the truth. Dad looked at me not with doubt, but disappointment. As my final act as CEO, he said coldly, I'm terminating Michael's employment effective immediately. Security moved toward me. James leaned close, his voice dripping with mock pity. I'm sorry it had to end this way, little brother. Maybe now you'll get a life outside spreadsheets. As I was escorted out, whispers followed me. Pity in some eyes. Smugness in others. But they had no idea what they'd just unleashed. Because while my brother thought he'd buried me, he forgot one thing. I'd built the ground he was standing on. And I knew exactly when it was going to collapse. The day I was thrown out of Foster Technologies, the world felt strangely quiet. No grand confrontation, no dramatic music, just the sound of my footsteps echoing down the marble hallway as security led me to the exit. Every inch of that building carried my fingerprints, the systems, the strategy, the vision, and yet I was leaving like a stranger. As the glass doors closed behind me, the cold wind hit my face, and for the first time in years, I had nothing left but my name, my knowledge, and the truth. I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the empty steering wheel, letting the shock sink in. Anger came next, hot and sharp. But it wasn't the kind of anger that burns out. It was the kind that crystallizes into purpose. I took out my phone, scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years, and typed a single text message, it's time. Then I put the phone down and started the engine. Monday was going to be interesting. That weekend, I stayed home, quietly putting things into motion. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom called 17 times, crying and pleading for me to talk to Dad. She begged me to keep the family together, to forgive, to forget. But forgiveness was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Dad never called. And James was busy celebrating his victory, flooding social media with photos of champagne, girls, and club lights, all paid for by the same company card I once used to buy office equipment. By Sunday night, the city outside was wrapped in thunder and rain. I sat in my home office, sipping black coffee, watching the lightning flash across the sky. On my desk lay a folder marked Final Phase. Inside it were years of carefully collected records, every unauthorized withdrawal, every shady transaction, every piece of evidence tying James to the kind of crimes that make boardrooms tremble and investigators move fast. When dawn came, I was ready. At exactly 9:15 a.m. Monday, My phone vibrated with a message from Sarah, my loyal executive assistant, the one person in that company who'd seen everything, and the one James hadn't bothered to fire. Probably because he thought she was just there to fetch coffee. "It's starting," her text read. I opened my laptop and logged in. Of course, I still had access. I'd built Foster Technologies' entire security infrastructure myself. When you design a digital fortress, you always leave a door that only you can open. The security feed blinked to life. On the screen, I watched James strut into his new office, coffee in hand, his designer suit gleaming under the lights. He dropped into my chair like a king taking the throne, kicked up his feet, and pressed the power button on his computer. That's when the show began. Instead of the standard login screen, the monitor lit up with a video, grainy but unmistakable. It was security footage from 3 years ago. James, sitting right there in that same office, leaning forward with a sly smile, whispering into the phone. "Of course I can get you their data," his recorded voice said. "My idiot brother does all the real work anyway. Just make sure the money goes to the Kaiman account." The color drained from his face. He jumped from the chair, slamming the keyboard, trying to shut it off, but the video played on, every word echoing through the office speakers. The footage didn't just stop there, it began streaming on every screen in his office, and the network was locked tight. His phone buzzed next. A message from the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, confirming receipt of an anonymous report with detailed evidence of insider trading and illegal transactions under his name. Emails started flooding his inbox. Confidential messages. Bank statements. Client complaints. All of them had been automatically forwarded to every board member, every investor, and every department head. Down in the lobby, federal agents in dark suits were walking through the glass doors, their badges glinting under the lights. I watched from my laptop as panic replaced the arrogance on his face. He called Dad over and over, but Dad's line was busy. No doubt, he was receiving his own storm of revelations, documents, emails, recordings. Everything James had buried was rising to the surface. At 9:30 a.m., Sarah entered James's office. Calm. Professional. Unshaken. "Mr. Foster," she said softly, "the board members are requesting an emergency meeting. Also, there are federal agents here to see you." James was sweating now. His voice cracked. "Tell them I'm busy. Cancel everything. And get IT up here now to fix these damn computers." Sarah didn't flinch. "I'm afraid that won't be possible, sir. The entire IT department just resigned. They sent a company-wide email explaining why. Something about loyalty to the person who actually built this company." "What?" His voice broke, disbelief turning to rage. "They can't do that. We have contracts." Actually, Sarah stepped forward and placed a folder on his desk. Their contracts were with a subsidiary company that holds all our intellectual property rights, Foster Innovation Labs. A company that, as of this morning, is no longer affiliated with Foster Technologies. His trembling hands opened the folder. Inside, clear as daylight, was the document showing that Foster Innovation Labs owned every major patent, every line of proprietary code, and every client contract that made Foster Technologies valuable. And at the bottom of that document was my signature, owner and founder. "But, the clients," James stammered, his voice shrinking. "They've already been informed of the management change," Sarah replied gently. "Most have signed new contracts directly with Foster Innovation Labs. It seems they prefer working with the person who's actually been handling their business all these years." The truth hit him like a bullet. He'd inherited an empty shell. All the value, all the technology, all the people, they were mine. The door burst open again. 2 FBI agents stepped inside, followed by Mr. Patterson, our company's legal counsel. "James Foster," one agent said firmly, "we need to ask you some questions regarding certain financial transactions." "You can't do this," James shouted, wild-eyed. "I'm the CEO. I'm in charge here." Mr. Patterson adjusted his glasses calmly. "Actually, about that," he pulled out a document. "The board has just concluded an emergency meeting. Given the circumstances, they've voted to remove you as CEO effective immediately." James's jaw dropped. "They can't remove me. I own this place. You own shares. Patterson corrected, in a company that, as of 9 a.m. this morning, has no intellectual property, no clients, and no development team. I believe the stock price reflects that reality. James lunged for his computer, desperate to check, but the screen still played looping clips of his crimes, his voice admitting every illegal deal, every betrayal. As the agents handcuffed him and led him out, I watched from my laptop. The once cocky grin was gone, replaced by the pale, hollow look of a man watching his kingdom crumble. Before closing the feed, I typed one last message. To all Foster Technologies employees, you have a choice. Stay aboard a sinking ship, or join us at Foster Innovation Labs, where integrity still matters. Your jobs are secure. Your efforts will be valued. Within an hour, 90% of the company joined me. Outside, the thunder rolled again. The storm had broken over James's empire. And I sat there, silent, watching the consequences of years of arrogance unfold exactly as I'd planned. Because revenge, when served with patience, isn't just satisfying, it's art. The news spread faster than fire in a dry forest. By noon, every major business channel had the same headline: Foster Technologies CEO under investigation for fraud and insider trading. Stock prices crashed, journalists camped outside the office building, and the board members scrambled to save their reputations. But no one could stop the fall, because this time, the truth had weight. It wasn't rumor or revenge. It was evidence, and it spoke louder than anything I could ever say. I watched it all unfold on the television in my living room. The same room where I once sat dreaming of success with my father's proud voice echoing in my ears. Now, that voice was silent. The house felt heavier, quieter, as if it, too, knew something had ended. My phone kept vibrating with messages and calls, but I ignored them all until one notification caught my eye. It was from an unknown number. Meet me. 7 p.m. The old family house. No name. No greeting. Just that one line. But I didn't need to guess. I knew who it was. When evening came, the sky was fading into a dusky red, and the roads were empty except for the whisper of cold wind. The old family house sat on the edge of town, a grand, stone building surrounded by overgrown vines and forgotten memories. I parked outside and took a deep breath before walking in. Inside, the air smelled like old wood and memories. In the living room, by the large window, stood my father. He looked smaller than I remembered, as if the weight of the last few days had crushed the pride right out of him. His once perfect posture had wilted, his eyes tired and red. "You came," he said softly. His voice didn't carry the authority it once did. It sounded almost human. "I got your message," I replied, standing still. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick years of unspoken words, of loyalty misplaced, of pain that had no apology big enough to heal it. Finally, he sighed. "You destroyed him." I met his gaze. He destroyed himself. I just stopped pretending not to see it. He turned away, staring out the window, his reflection faint against the darkening glass. "You could have come to me," he murmured. "You didn't have to do this." I almost laughed, not out of amusement, but disbelief. "Come to you? You made me invisible the day you handed him my company. The day you told me I was too emotional to lead, that James had the real business mind." His jaw tightened. "I did what I thought was best for the family." "No, you did what was best for him," I said, stepping closer. "You didn't want a leader. You wanted a mirror. And James gave you that: the charm, the confidence, the lies. You didn't see me because I reminded you of what you never were." He closed his eyes. "You think revenge makes you better than him?" "It doesn't make me better," I said quietly. "It makes me free." The old grandfather clock in the corner ticked slowly, each second stretching like an echo of everything we'd lost. When I finally turned to leave, he spoke again, not loud, not angry, just broken. "Your mother's been crying every night," he said. "She blames me, but she's scared of you now." I stopped at the door. She shouldn't be. I didn't start this war. I just ended it. When I stepped outside, the first drops of rain began to fall. It was fitting, cleansing, heavy, and real. I walked to my car, the cool air washing away the last traces of bitterness from my face. For the first time in years, I felt empty, but in a peaceful way. The next few weeks were chaos for everyone else, but strangely calm for me. Foster Innovation Labs thrived overnight. The best employees had joined willingly. Clients returned, impressed by the transparency and ethics we promised and delivered. Our name became a symbol of what Foster Technologies had lost: credibility. But even in victory, there was a hollowness I couldn't ignore. Late at night, when the office was quiet and the city lights shimmered outside my window, I sometimes thought of the boy I used to be, the one who worked side by side with his brother, believing they were building a legacy together. That boy was gone now, replaced by someone who'd learned that love without respect is just weakness disguised as loyalty. One night, as I was locking up the office, Sarah appeared at the door holding 2 cups of coffee. She smiled gently. "You've been staring at that screen for hours again." I smiled faintly. Old habits die hard. She handed me a cup and sat beside me. "You did what you had to do. But don't forget, the fight's over now. You can breathe again." I looked at her, really looked at her, the calm eyes, the quiet strength, the loyalty that had never wavered. "Do you ever regret staying?" I asked. "Never," she said. "Because some people build empires out of greed. You built one out of integrity." Her words stayed with me long after she left. That night, I walked through the empty hallways of my new company, my company, and felt something shift inside me. It wasn't pride. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes after a storm, when everything is broken but finally honest. A few months later, I received a letter from my mother. It wasn't long, just a few lines written in her careful handwriting. "Your father's health is failing. He doesn't say it, but he watches every news report about you. Sometimes, I catch him smiling. He's proud, even if he'll never admit it. Come home when you can. Love, Mom." I folded the letter and sat quietly for a long time. Maybe one day I would go back. Maybe one day I'd forgive them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace more than anger. For now, though, I had work to do. Not revenge, not retribution, rebuilding. Creating something that would last, not out of spite, but out of purpose. As I stood by the window, the city stretched before me, lights flickering like 1,000 tiny dreams waiting to be born. Somewhere out there, people were still chasing power, still betraying, still losing themselves for wealth. But I had already learned the one lesson that mattered. Power built on lies collapses under truth. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge is not destruction, it's success that doesn't need to be explained. 6 months had passed since the storm that destroyed Foster Technologies. The chaos had settled, leaving behind silence, the kind that hums with both victory and loneliness. My new company, Foster Innovation Labs, was flourishing beyond anything I'd imagined. Investors who once ignored my proposals were now calling me personally. Clients praised our honesty. Employees walked with confidence instead of fear. And yet, even in that calm, I could feel something shifting in the background, like the faint tremor before another quake. One evening, I stayed late at the office. The building was quiet, the only sound the rhythmic clicking of my keyboard. Sarah had already gone home, and most of the lights were dimmed. I was reviewing the final draft of a major contract, a partnership that would take our company international, when my office phone rang. The call was coming from a blocked number. I hesitated, then picked it up. "Hello." For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months, rough, exhausted, but unmistakable. "Hello, brother." I froze. James. I hadn't seen or spoken to him since the day he was arrested. Reports said he'd been released on bail pending trial, his assets frozen, his public image shredded. I should have hung up. But something in his voice stopped me, not anger, not arrogance, but something colder. "What do you want, James?" I asked quietly. He laughed, a hollow sound. "I wanted to hear your voice. You sound different. Stronger. Must feel nice, finally having what you always wanted." "I didn't want your downfall," I said. "I wanted the truth to come out." "Same thing," he muttered. "You and your truth." A pause. I could hear him breathing. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. Dad's dead. The words hit me like a hammer. I gripped the edge of my desk. What? He had a heart attack 2 nights ago. Mom called me this morning. Didn't she call you? I didn't answer. I hadn't checked my phone all day. My mind was spinning. My father, the man I'd spent my whole life trying to impress, fight, and forgive, was gone. James continued, his tone shifting, darker now. You think you won, but all you did was kill him. He couldn't take the shame, the headlines, the board's betrayal. You broke him. I clenched my fists. He broke himself, James. We both know that. Keep telling yourself that, he said coldly. But remember this, I've lost everything. And men like me don't stay buried for long. The line went dead. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the phone, my reflection flickering on the glass of the office window. The city lights blurred through the rain outside. My pulse was hammering in my ears. James was free and angry. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was filled with fragments of the past, my father's proud smile when James first took over, his disappointed silence when I confronted him, and the last time I saw him standing in that old house, too tired to fight. Now, he was gone. The next morning, I drove to the family home. The gate was open, the garden unkept, and the air heavy with loss. Inside, the house was filled with quiet sobs. My mother sat on the couch, her eyes red, holding a photograph of my father from his younger days, strong, confident, the way I remembered him before the bitterness took over. When she saw me, she stood up slowly. You came, she whispered. I nodded. I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner. She shook her head. You both should have been here long before now. Her voice cracked. He asked for you, you know. The night before he died, he said your name. Said he should have listened. The words shattered something in me. I wanted to ask her if he forgave me, but I knew forgiveness doesn't always come with words. Sometimes it comes too late. At the funeral, I saw James for the first time in months. He looked nothing like the brother I remembered. The suit he wore hung loose on his frame, his face pale and hollow. But his eyes still burned with the same dangerous fire. When the ceremony ended, he approached me. The tension between us was thick enough to stop the wind. Nice speech, he said quietly. Almost sounded like you cared. I did care, I replied. Despite everything. He smirked. Then maybe you'll care about this too, I'm not done. You took everything from me, but I've still got one thing left. I frowned. What are you talking about? He leaned closer, his breath cold against my ear. Our father's estate. The controlling shares he never transferred, the ones held under his personal trust. Guess who he named as the secondary beneficiary before he died? My stomach dropped. Me, he said with a bitter smile. So technically, little brother, your fancy new empire? It's sitting on top of a legacy I still own part of. That's impossible, I said, though my voice didn't sound sure. Oh, it's very possible, he said, stepping back. Lawyers confirmed it this morning. I'm not coming after your money, though. No. I'm coming after your reputation, the thing you're so damn proud of. Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing among the gravestones, the chill biting through my coat. The following week was tense. Subtle things started happening, anonymous tips sent to the media, rumors about stolen patents, false claims about unethical practices in my company. None of it stuck, but it was enough to make investors nervous. Then one night, Sarah came rushing into my office, pale and shaking. You need to see this, she said, placing her phone on my desk. It was a video, a doctored recording of me in a meeting, edited to make it look like I was admitting to manipulating data and bribing clients. It had already gone viral. This isn't real, I whispered. I know, Sarah said. But people don't care about truth, they care about headlines. We need to act fast. I leaned back, closing my eyes. I didn't need proof. I knew exactly who had done this. James was striking back, smarter this time, quieter, meaner. But I'd learned long ago that surviving betrayal isn't about being ruthless, it's about being patient. Let him play, I said finally. He wants a war, he'll get one. But this time, I'm not fighting for revenge. I'm fighting for everything I've built. Sarah looked at me worried, but trusting. You think he'll stop? No, I said softly. Men like James don't stop. They destroy themselves. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, just like it had the night everything began. I watched the lightning flash across the skyline and felt that familiar calm settle over me. The storm was coming again. But this time, I wasn't afraid. The storm outside was a mirror of what was brewing inside me: silent thunder, building pressure, and lightning that hadn't yet struck. The world was watching me again, this time with suspicion instead of admiration. Every headline carried my name, every whisper questioned my integrity. James's fake video had done its job well. But what he didn't understand was that I had spent years surviving in shadows darker than this. I knew how to stay calm when the world turned chaotic. And I knew one simple truth: lies burn fast, but truth burns longer. 4 days, I said nothing. My PR team begged me to make a statement, my investors demanded answers, and the media circled like vultures. But silence can be a weapon too, and I was patient. Sarah was by my side through it all. Her voice, calm and steady, was my anchor. We'll prove it, she said one night, setting down a stack of documents on my desk. We just need to find where he made the edit. There's always a digital fingerprint. She was right. Every forgery leaves a trace, a moment of arrogance the liar never sees coming. 3 nights later, our cybersecurity team found it. A small, hidden metadata tag embedded in the video file. The tag was linked to an IP address. The origin? A private server rented under the name J. Foster. I didn't feel joy when I saw it. Just quiet inevitability. Prepare everything, I said. But no police. Not yet. That same evening, I drove out of the city. The sky was heavy with rain, and the roads gleamed under the streetlights. My destination was a place I knew too well, the old Foster estate, where my father's study still stood untouched, a relic of another life. James had been living there since his release, a ghost haunting his own ruins. When I arrived, the mansion was dark except for a faint glow from the study window. I stepped inside. The air smelled of whiskey and dust. He was there, sitting at my father's old desk, the same one where he'd once watched Dad sign away my future. His eyes were hollow but alert, like a man ready for his last fight. You shouldn't have come, he said without looking up. I had to, I replied. It's time to end this. He laughed bitterly. End this? You already ended everything, brother. I'm just giving you a taste of your own medicine. I stepped closer. You call this revenge? Forging evidence, framing me, dragging Dad's name through the dirt one last time? You're not fighting me anymore, James, you're fighting yourself. He stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. Don't pretend you're innocent. You humiliated me, stole my company, turned me into a criminal. I met his eyes calmly. You did that to yourself. I just let the truth breathe. He stared at me for a long moment, chest heaving, anger burning behind his trembling hands. Then his expression shifted, something between desperation and madness. You think you've won because people believe you now. But everything you built came from our name. From Father's legacy. Without it, you're nothing. Then let's see what your legacy is worth, I said quietly, pulling a folder from my coat. I tossed it onto the desk. Inside were printed screenshots, email logs, IP traces, proof that the video he'd leaked came from his account. This is your digital fingerprint. It's over. He looked at the papers, then at me. His eyes flickered, fear, guilt, rage, all fighting for dominance. You think this matters? You'll ruin me again. You'll destroy what little I have left. You destroyed it yourself, I said. You've been destroying everything since the day you decided family meant ownership. His breathing grew heavier. For a second, I thought he might break down, but then, something dark crossed his face. He reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a small pistol. Don't make me do this, he whispered. I didn't move. You won't. Don't test me. His voice cracked. You took everything. I didn't take your life, James, I said, my tone steady but soft. But you're about to throw it away yourself. The silence stretched. The rain outside hammered against the windows. Then, slowly, His hand started to shake. The gun clattered onto the desk. He collapsed into the chair, burying his face in his hands. For the first time, he didn't look like my enemy. He looked like what he truly was, my broken brother, drowning in the mess he'd made. "I never wanted this," he said hoarsely. "I just wanted him to see me the way he saw you." Those words pierced deeper than any accusation. For a moment, the anger inside me dissolved, leaving only sorrow. "I know," I said quietly. "But he never saw either of us clearly, did he?" He looked up, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "What now?" I picked up the gun and set it aside. "Now you tell the truth. I won't press charges if you confess publicly. You'll serve time, but you'll walk out free, clean, not hunted. This ends with truth, not blood." He didn't speak for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. The next morning, every major news outlet aired James's confession. He admitted to fabricating the evidence, manipulating the media, and waging a personal vendetta out of hate. The internet erupted, shock, outrage, sympathy, but the truth had finally found its way home. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just stood by the window of my office, watching the sunrise wash over the city. Sarah entered quietly, holding a cup of coffee. "It's over," she said softly. I nodded. "It's finally over." She looked at me for a moment, then said, "You could have destroyed him completely. Why didn't you?" I stared at the light spilling through the glass, warming the cold walls. "Because destruction doesn't heal anything. I spent years proving I was right. Now I just want to be whole." Outside, the sky turned gold. The chaos, the noise, the hatred, all of it felt far away now. In its place was something simple. Silence. Peace. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the prison, James's handwriting, neat and slow. "I don't expect forgiveness. But for the first time, I see what you were fighting for. I'm sorry I couldn't see it sooner. Maybe when I get out, we'll talk not as rivals, but as brothers. Take care of Mom. She needs you more than you think." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my drawer. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger, or pride, or pain. Just quiet acceptance. Sometimes, justice isn't about winning or losing. It's about closure, about choosing not to let hate define what's left of your life. As I walked out of the office that evening, Sarah called after me, smiling softly. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said. For once, just home. The city lights shimmered outside like 1,000 second chances. The storm had passed, leaving behind a calm I had never known before. And in that calm, I realized something simple, something my father never understood and James never believed, that success built on truth doesn't need revenge to survive. It just needs peace to grow. And at last, I had found mine.